Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for showing up. It's a great crowd. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Scott, John, and the API for having me up here. It's really a pleasure to sit and talk with you guys and to be able to be a little bit of this about That's good. That's good.
Oh, that's it.
About levels, near-term plans and what we're looking to do. First off, I think Todd's daughter is a recipient too of the scholarship. You want to stand up and get a round of applause for the answer?
Thanks, Mom.
Probably just love everybody. Continental Resources was founded in 1967. I think the majority of us know Mr. Harold Gano. Back in Major County, drilled a bunch of wells, and then we went public in 2007 to raise capital to go ahead and go start a small little project in North Dakota called the Lewis Basin. It has done fairly well there. And then just recently in 2022, we went private again. So now we're the largest private operator in the local area. So, well, probably need to start from a corporate perspective and tell you guys a little about what we're doing as a company, how we're going to manage through some of these potentially turbulent times. And then kind of ease ourselves into, what Oklahoma looks like over the next 12 or 24 months. And then end with some questions, if that's okay, Matt. I don't know if that's what you guys want to do or not. But from a corporate perspective, we are now in 4 basins. We have about 20 drilling rigs going. Obviously, we're in the Anadarko Basin, in the Williston, which are our 2 core basins. Over the past couple of years, we've picked up a large position in the Powder River. From Chesapeake and wherever Max Holloway is, we bought some stuff from Max and bought some stuff with the same thing bankruptcy. So we've got a relatively large position in the Powder River that what we think is going to be our 4 or 5 year inventory. There's a tremendous upside in the Powder River. Most recently, we did pick up a position in the Delaware Basin, and then we've got a small position in Midland, and we did that transaction from Pioneer, and we're continuing to grow that asset. So when it comes to asset allocation from a capital perspective, we've got a nice blend of different assets that we can stick capital with. So for 2024, we're going to average about 415 or 420,000 BOE a day. And that's going to basically take about a $3.4 billion budget. From a growth perspective, we're going to remain relatively flat. There's probably going to be a 1 or 2% increase when it's all said and done. And for Mr. Suter that's looking at me, that's not our maintenance capital. That's just the fact that these assets are so big that the production's lumpy. So you'll have, when you're a 400,000 barrel a day company, you've got to look at things on a 2 or 3 year basis when you're looking to grow. So 2022, we grew 10%. 23 was 6 or 7%, and now we're going to be flat for a bit, and then in 2025 we'll grow as well. So I'm very active across all 4 assets, different maturity levels in each one of them, of course, trying to unlock what the powder means to us, trying to figure out what the heck we bought in the Permian and see what kind of zones we can go and tap and get that. And then with Williston, it's probably about the 6th inning in Williston. We've got tier 1 rocks. Probably mostly drilled up. That's not just for us. That's probably for the majority of the players there. And now we're testing some of the fringes in that basin. From a 2025 perspective, we'll probably be close to where we are now. Obviously, we're a private company, so we don't have to disclose exactly what we're doing. But I think from a planning perspective, it's going to be flat, but probably slightly up. So we're at 19 rigs now. We'll probably be at 20 by the end of the year. I think there's the potential that we could add a couple more rigs in the first quarter of 2025. The interesting fact about the rig pickups is they are looking like they're going to be in Anadarko Basin rig pickups, which is, from my perspective, being an Oklahoma guy, it's very exciting for me. So to put it in perspective, in 2024, we're going to spend about $525 million net to CLR in the Anadarko Basin. I think in 2025, that number should be closer to 600, maybe a little bit north of $600 million, scattered across, southern Oklahoma, and then some of our assets we had in Western Anadarko Basin with our South Korean partner. So I think what excites me about Oklahoma and the potential about Oklahoma, and that's probably one of the key things I wanted to get across to this audience, is that when we were public, we continually got the question about, why are you allocating capital to Oklahoma? It's not shiny. And to be frank with you, we were okay with that because Oklahoma is a top-notch asset for us. I mean, it's our lowest lifting cost from an economics perspective. Oklahoma competes with our Permian asset very, very well, and competes with our Williston asset very, very well. I mean, there's a solid amount of service, companies here where the state of Oklahoma is very friendly to us. Mr. Ham has a little bit of influence in this state, so that's always good. It's always good to work in the state where Mr. Ham's got a little bit of influence. And at the end of the day, there's just a 5,000 foot column of stacked pay that is untapped. Now, there's a tremendous amount of wells in the state of Oklahoma, but I think if you look at where the rig count is today in Oklahoma relative to what used to be a typical Sycamore, Woodford kind of play, I mean, you're seeing rigs move up into pin sections, and I think there's a fair amount of that rig activity going on, in those areas right now. And I'm sure a lot of you are probably doing some of the work out there. So when I think about what the potential is in Oklahoma, I mean, we haven't scratched the surface on what we can do here in the state of Oklahoma. So from a 2025 perspective, and then going forward in 26 and 27. I think there's the potential with our current acreage position to stay at that $500 or $600 million capital spend level, and then have 6 or 7 rigs running, over the next several years. And to me, being in this role for this company for the past 12 years, I mean, this is the second or third time I've had conversations about there's a limited amount of resources in the Anadarko, and then our teams continue to unlock things. Before you know it, we've got undeveloped locations to go into drill. So that kind of is a little bit of a purview, I guess, of what we're going to do over the next couple of years. I thought I'm just trying to go ahead, by the way. Anybody? All right, I'll keep going. You guys, the last time I think Sammy had to give me the hook. So Sammy, if you want to do that again, just give me the hook. She's your daughter. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so there's a couple of things that we got going on that I wanted to make sure I was going to touch on. We're a private company now, the largest private company in the local community, and our commitment to Oklahoma is very, very strong. And when you look at what we've done in Oklahoma, from a lower 48 perspective on the deepest measured depth wells in the lower 48, we are number 3 in the entire lower 48 for wells drilled. From an ND perspective, on a TVD perspective, we're number 2. So the lower 48, as far as the number of the deepest TVD wells that we've drilled, we're the second in the lower 48. When you smash those two together, so the deepest TVD wells, longest laterals, we're number 1 in the lower 48. So our drilling guys, which I don't think we have any of our drilling guys here, and our completion guys, everything, just an absolutely fantastic job doing the best that they possibly can to de-risk critical operations in Oklahoma geology, which some of us know is extremely, extremely challenging. So what's unlocking this inventory are those type of opportunities. I mean, we're going to continue to go longer. We're drilling 16,000 foot laterals now. We've got different zones of interest that we're going after on the exploration perspective, and we can continue to do that. We've got 2 EOR projects going on right now. So tertiary recovery is going to start coming into play. I mean, the reality is, we're getting 6, 7, 8% of the oil out of the ground now. We're getting a hell of a lot of the growth. So utilizing technology to go into unlocking reserve is what 2025 and 2026 looks like for Continental. So we've got a tremendous future ahead of us. There's a tremendous runway for us in Oklahoma. This asset will continue to compete for capital, and we look forward to working with all you guys on the program. Before I wrap up, there's always a couple of things that I get asked. Rusty Daly did a really good job of pinning me down, so I just like I'll head on. So you're so committed to Oklahoma. I'm going to paraphrase Rusty's question. You're so committed to Oklahoma. Why did you divest something about this? So it's a fair question, right? So our strategy and our strategy in general is portfolio churn. So we have 4 assets. We've got a tremendous amount of inventory. Obviously, we don't have unlimited capital. So what we've got to do is we've got to make sure that what we want to do across all 4 assets is appropriate. Validus came. Obviously, we have bought Citizen now, so they're going to be a fairly large player in the Mid-Con. And we had conversations about, where this inventory that we have that's undeveloped resides on our current growth schedule. Now, prior to picking up the Powder River assets and prior to picking up the Permian assets, that inventory probably ranked over the next few years. But because of the M&A activity that we've done over the past 3 or 4 years, what it does is kick an inventory out. So that inventory that's kicked out, from a business perspective, it makes sense that we monetize that, and we're going to do that across all of our assets. And then we take that, we take that capital revenue and we reinvest it in the business, whether that's from a debt reduction perspective, whether it's just from an activity increase perspective, or planning ourselves for more M&A activity. So that's the first question that I get is you're super committed to Oklahoma, why are you selling stuff? 2, why haven't you guys been in this buying group? Like a lot of the folks in here are. Again, I think we all know Mr. Ham. We are not going to go and pay $3 or $4 million for undeveloped location. We're just not going to do it. We absolutely aren't. What we are going to do is we're going to be very strategic about bolt-ons and what we can do with our operations team to bolt on undeveloped acreage positions to our current position to be able to grow that business. More importantly, what we're going to do is we're going to leverage our exploration expertise. I'm a little bit biased, obviously, because I'm a Continental guy. I think we've got the best group of explorationists within the entire Little 48, within our building, and we're going to leverage that. So we're going to continue to test new concepts in Oklahoma and in North Dakota, in West Texas. I think you all probably seen that we're drilling Barnett wells and we're drilling Woodford wells. There's a whole bench that's been out there, and we're going to continue to basically build our inventory that way. Third question: why did we go private? Are we going to sell? No, we're not. Mr. Ham is extremely involved in the business. The family is extremely involved in the business. We have a 5-year plan to grow this company to north of 500,000 BOE a day. It's very easy to get to with the inventory we currently have now. And we're basically positioning this company for the next 50 years, not 5 years. So we took the company private 2 years ago. We took on some debt. We have chewed away that debt now from a financial metrics perspective. The balance sheet is in a really, really nice spot. But that does not mean that we're going to go and spend $3 or $4 million per net undeveloped locations like some other operators are. We're going to be very strategic. I think that kind of wraps up my spiel, unless there's any questions or comments or anything.
If you have time, Scott, I'd love to have. Anybody have a couple questions? Scott's constrained for time for a meeting, so I appreciate.
It's a culture. So as you guys see, I need to be so.
Scott could be there for another hour.
Working with micro.
I was working with micro. Okay. Yeah, thank you. I get a lot of feedback from it's a funny story. I'll tell you 2 funny stories about this. First one is I've got 2 daughters, 12 and 14. Those of you that have daughters under that age, they are absolutely tough. They are so I did not know that I was going to be on TV. I wasn't even supposed to be there. So Chad Elliott is our drilling VP. That was a drilling rig. I'm a completion guy. That's it. My name's supposed to be around, but Chad didn't even let me around those things. So Chad called me the night before and said, "Hey, you need to go out there and just keep an eye on those less tenured drilling engineers." I can't say no. That's not a. So I show up, and all I'm doing is prepping some of these engineers about, hey, make sure you stay away from this. If you ask me this, go there, and then that. So I wasn't even supposed to be there for one thing. So that's thanks to Chad Elliott. 2, I didn't know that commercial was going to go on the air. Nobody does. So we're sitting there, and it pops up, and my daughter's there, and she's like, "Dad, you're on TV." Holy shit. The thing working out of her mouth next to me is the best. She goes, "Your second chin looks pretty good." Anyway, working with Mike, he's a fantastic guy. He's super pro industry, and we've got some Petroleum lines people here. They know him very well. Super nice guy, really inquisitive. We have lots of conversations, off camera, just about random things about how drilling rigs work, and he truly is inquisitive, and he wants to make sure that he continues to bolster up the industry, and he's doing a great job of doing it. So thanks for the question, Sam. I appreciate it. Congratulations on the retirement too. What else? Any other questions that I can mumble through?
Well, all the bridges that y'all got done, every one of them is directional, correct?
We do not have, well, we will drill an SWD every now and then, but yeah, they're all on install programs.
How's your refrac and workover schedule looking like, you know?
So we have, in Oklahoma, we've got about 10 refracs in the ground now. I think from a company perspective, we're closer to about 24. The other, 10 or 12 are in Williston. I think where we are right now is at a kind of watch phase to see if we can kind of understand it. That program is really near and dear to my heart. I mean, if any engineer looks at what we're pulling out of the ground versus what's left, and then the fact that we operate 6,000 wells across our core assets, and none of them have the optimum completion on them, and then some of them have just an absolute dog of it. So there's still a tremendous amount of potential. Where we are right now, though, is that I think if you want to do it the right way, you're probably in a mode of relining them and spending some money on some flush joint 3.5, and that well work just kind of gets pricey.
Yeah.
So it's just balancing that. Are you going to drill a new well, a drill over, or a tightly in space child well, or you got to refrac it? And right now, to be honest with you, Matt, I don't think we have the answer. If anybody does, I'd love to have a conversation about it.
Save the wells, that's all.
Yeah.
Save the wells.
But I do believe that the challenge that I made to the team is that if what portion of the program can be wells that are already in the ground, so that we don't have to deploy drill and rig, that we can go and get essentially incremental barrels from wells they've already got drilled. And of the 24 projects, I think it's fair to say that 75% of them have been PB10 positive. So there's potential there. Now it's just trying to figure out what sequence do we do these? Can we do them on a standalone perspective? And what's the overall opportunity? But I think personally that the refracs are a tremendous upside. You guys have seen some of the acquisitions that have happened here recently. If you look at the metrics that make up some of those acquisitions, these big players are allocating value to refrac. So I do think that there's potential to them. It's not just a straight PB10, PB20, and here's what we're going to offer. There is upside. It's being baked into some of the refrac technology. So I think it's there. Sure. Good question. Thank you. What else? Brandon, Jerry, another question? Thank you. Well, thank you all very much.
Thanks, Scott. Next we'll have Mr. Walt Duncan. I want to tell you a little funny story. Walt was supposed to speak last year. About a day or two ahead of time, he came down with a cold. So this year, we sequestered Walt in a cabin in the woods about a week ago, and the limo picked him up a couple hours ago, and he's here with us this time. So thanks, Walt.
Appreciate that.
All right, well, so I was told to talk a little bit about our company, and then got a number of questions about my role on the OKC branch of the Kansas City Fed. So I thought I'd share some of the things we're thinking about there too as well. So it's interesting, just to give you a bit of a scale issue. So one of Continental's days oil production, that's our year. Sort of one quiet up here in the first place. We've our company's been around for a long time in some shape or form. We found a lease. The lease was out of Illinois #1, and that was the first lease we took. And believe that was in July of '39 up in Illinois. So we started that tuning area. My grandfather moved to Oklahoma City in '48. He worked with Permian basins in partners for years and years. That's where some of our legacy assets are. I came into the business at a time where we were sort of on the fence, didn't have a lot of direction, but after I got through business school, I came back, trained as and stuff. Made mistakes for 3 or 4 years, and then about 2000, we drove a stake in the ground out in Dewey County, Oklahoma, and drove our first Cleveland test. And so, sort of ever since then, we've been something of a Cleveland, Monmouthon player. We still are today. Recent history that has changed, I think something fundamental is I worked for my family for a long time. So being fourth generation, back in May of 21, I was part of a 17-person ownership group for our company. I went to 3 in May. So it's me, my brother, and my sister. I'm very serious about this. I sort of finally feel like I'm the manager that I've always wanted to be. Nothing against my family, but we had a range of people. I had cousins that were in their 20s, and aunts and uncles that were in their 70s. It's hard to get a lot of alignment. Since then, I've got a great group of people that I work with. We're really excited about what we're seeing coming out. We've been on the sidelines here for about 6 months, or we'll be on 6 months. We'll pick up a rig in November. Started in Livingston County on some Marmaton and Cleveland stuff. And we're going to drill a third of our Cherokee wells. Opportunity long, cash poor right now. Gas prices haven't helped us one bit, but that's comes with the territory. And we're okay with that. So we're just trying to sort of get ourselves back in starting blocks. Start again. I'm going to switch a little bit, tell you a little bit about the Federal Reserve, the Federal Reserve Bank. So I'm on the Oklahoma City branch of the Kansas City Fed. So there are 3 branch banks. So there's Oklahoma City, Omaha, and Denver. They all report to Kansas City. And of course, Kansas City is the 10th district, so 12 total banks in the U.S. And basically the structure of our deal is, and my role primarily, is to try to aggregate real-time information, deliver it to a board meeting that's, let's just say, week 1. In week 2, all that information from the branches goes to Kansas City, so they begin to think about what's going to be important to them when in week 3 they go to DC and get in front of the FMOC. And that's when they decide whether or not to raise, lower, hold interest rates, and or change the balance sheet. So really the salient thing that has been on the minds, I think, of the Federal Reserve, of course, 2 mandates, full employment and stable prices. When we say stable prices, that means little or no inflation. The target rate for inflation is 2%. And I think they are dead serious about trying to get to 2%. So arguably, I know people are going to, there's lots of different things that go into this inflation rate. It is broken below 3. And, directionally, all that's looking, that looks right. And I understand that the price of eggs is still freaking crazy. How you can pay $7 for an egg is sort of unbelievable. But these things, the interest rates and inflation affect different parts of the industries at different times. I think the thing that is given the most recent change, I feel pretty confident that you're going to see a drop in interest rates. Information flows only one way. It goes up and it doesn't come down. And I think the thing that is most important to think about, so we've had a very tight labor market. And that in and of itself has been inflationary over the past couple of years. And so the difference, and this is a little bit different than just looking at the employment rate, but what they do, they keep track of the number of applicants out there looking for jobs and the number of job openings. To give you a feel, back in the 2000s, that number ran pretty close to 1 to 1. Right? Every job applicant, one job out there, whether or not they fit it on. So that was up until about 2000. And then with COVID, just after COVID, big spike in employment, and then a drop right back down. Labor participation went away. And so there were 2 job openings for every 1 person looking for a job. Now that is, by definition, that's an inflationary environment. That's when people, if you were accountants or a lawyer, or you could basically work from home here in Oklahoma and get paid, West Coast or East Coast prices. So, so I think that is one of the major things that they've looked at. And directionally, we got back down to 1 here very recently. So what that does, and when I think about the dual mandates, you sort of have to pick your battle a little bit. Got these tools, interest rates, and money supply, and they're like sledgehammers trying to drive penny nails. They're big, rough. In aggregate, yes, it affects the economy, but it affects different parts of the economy differently for different industries. And so yes, it's not fair, but that's the way it is. And so now, I think the feeling is that we're pretty close to getting prices stable. Now what we want to do is make sure that unemployment doesn't begin to ramp up. So there's just a chance that we will have something of a soft landing. So anyway, that's I'll say one more thing about kind of inflation and the way I think about inflation. There was a question asked at a meeting up in Tulsa. One guy was asking, he said, is the Fed responsible for inflation? And the way I would answer that is say, here's sort of what happened to us. So during COVID, we had this huge spike in unemployment, and the governors are very concerned that if this lasts too long, they're going to get some structural problems that will be very difficult to handle. So one of the ways they stimulated the economy was they expanded the balance sheet. So $4 trillion worth of money supply came into the market just from the Federal Reserve. Now, the other side of the coin was the fiscal stimulus. So this is our Congress. They basically provided stimulus to the tune of $6 trillion. So you've got $10 trillion worth of essentially new money supply that's out there affecting the economy, arguably driving up interest rates. And then on top of that, you get a serious supply problem with the invasion of Ukraine. So those 3 things, and so you ask me, well, yes, the Federal Reserve was responsible for some of the inflationary effect, but they're dealing with a $10 trillion problem now, and the only way you change the stimulus is to tax people, and I'm pretty sure that most congressmen are not going to tell you, hey, it's time for us to raise taxes. So that's really all I have. So I want to leave time for anybody else, but if you've got a question, you can find me afterward. Is that all right? But I just want to make sure everybody gets through. Jennifer?
Thank you all. Our next and final speaker is John Suter. I know many of you know John from working at the Continental in Chesapeake days. Out of the industry for a little while, and we're happy to have him back in the oil and gas industry. So without further ado, Mr. John Suter.
I do appreciate it as well for inviting us here so that we could tell you a little bit about our companies. I'm too smart to ad lib. I want to just do it rightly, but I'll go fast. But I really want to tell you a little bit about myself. I've had an unusual career path. A little bit about Riley Permian. I think we're kind of an unknown company here in Oklahoma City. And then a little bit about, real quickly, what they're planning to do going forward. So I was raised in Dallas, Texas Tech, petroleum engineer, 1982 grad. Just one of these. So I met my wife there. It's kind of the best thing that happened to me. We've been married 41 years, raised 2 boys. Both of them are OU petroleum engineers. Probably some good people out there. But one of them's still in the industry. He's a reservoir manager with BPX in Denver. But my career so far has been 42 years. Spent 38 years in the industry across 6 different companies. Most of you out there through relations through one of those companies. I was retired for 2 years. Talk about that in a second. And then I worked for Governor Sept for the last 2 years. And then just recently thrilled to get back in the industry there at Riley Permian. Really had a pretty amazing career. I got to work with legends like Petroleum, we just talked about. I was front and center with Aubrey McClendon. Just great guys to learn from. I got to do a lot of neat things, kind of across lots of broad spectrum of the industry. Everything from private equity startups, where you're buying an asset and hiring people to get your full staff, to managing multi-billion-dollar budgets through large rig deployments. I think we all know that's not a great idea anymore. As well as becoming a COO of a couple of companies here locally. So it's been a pretty good, cool career. But look, I've also had some challenges. Most of us have had challenges in the oil industry somewhere. My exposure to that was working with a company when Carl Icahn and his team swooped in, and he quickly took over the company and the board. And if there's one thing that will make you retire, he's it. And so I did. 2020 retired. I tell people I think retirement is overrated. You play golf about 3 days a week, and it's pretty fun. And but then a lot of us that have, I think you miss the camaraderie and the problem solving that we all do, with our various teams. So it was something that I really missed. Was looking at doing something else, but just it's just too much work to start over something new. But then I got a call from Governor Stitt, who wanted me to consider being his chief operating officer for the state of Oklahoma. And I'm like, what is a chief operating officer? I didn't even know the government had one. But it does. And it's strange how these things happen. I got a call from a guy in church that said, hey, I know you're retired, but you have a lot of the qualifications I think he's looking for. Would you consider this? And so, prayed about it and certainly did. To me, it was kind of my mission field in Oklahoma. Why don't I try to give back to the state, that's blessed so many of us here and our families. And the state needs, some good business minds to try to bring efficiency to the government, believe me. And it's something that many of you should consider. So, as a state COO, you might wonder what I did. It was my job to help impose Governor Stitt's will on 30,000 government employees across 120 agencies. I was responsible for the governor's cabinet. I was a cabinet member myself, Secretary of Operations and Government Efficiency. So, kind of a schmoozy title, but I got a lot of the everything else. I also ran a 1,000-person organization called the OMES, and you may have heard of it. It's Office of Management and Enterprise Services. The government has a central hub that has kind of all the back office functions, so that every agency theoretically doesn't have to have that. It's stuff like real estate, construction, IT, central purchasing, budgeting, just stuff like that. But it really was a great time there where you can kind of see behind the curtain of government what actually goes on there. I can tell you there's just shockingly, there's a tremendous amount of money listed. And most of it is in kind of duplicate positions within these 30,000 people that work there. Every agency wants to have their own accountants. They want to have their own IT people. But as the director of OMS, I have a lot of statutory power to try to influence that really good. In April of this year, a mutual connection of mine introduced me to Bobby Riley. He's the CEO of Riley Permian. A couple months of discussion with him. He eventually offered me the COO role. And certainly I accepted, based on the government. But now I'd really like to tell you a little bit about who Riley Permian is and kind of what drew me to this opportunity. Riley's a blue-oriented, small cap, oil and natural gas producer that focuses mostly in Texas and New Mexico. Bobby Riley is CEO. He's very entrepreneurial. He's a great guy if you haven't met him. He spent a lot of his career in Houston, so he's just kind of new to the Oklahoma industry here. He's been in various capacities within the industry, a lot of private companies. But in his most recent thing for Permian, he built up an Eagle Ford position, started development, flipped it, and he and his partners did well, and then started a new company. So let me give you some history of how I got started. In June 2016, Bobby formed Riley Permian. They and two other private equity companies own working interest in this Northwest Shelf field called Champions. That's in Yoakum County, Texas. It's near the town of Plains. I don't know where that is. It's about 70 miles southwest of Rutherford, right on the New Mexico border. In the first quarter of 2017, Yorktown and Bluescape, those are the two other private equity companies, they combined their working interest with Riley, so that Riley controlled about 100% of the working interest in Champions. They did that for common units within the company, but it's still private at the time. But they started development on the asset, we'll talk about more in a second. But they, in February of 2021, they closed on a reverse merger with a small public company called Tingas. And they did that to be able to go public. It's just easier to merge into a public company. They subsequently renamed it Riley Exploration Permian, and that's basically as it exists today. In March of 2023, they formed a joint venture company called RPC Power, and they did that to own generation equipment that in turn they could use their own natural gas to basically power generators that make electricity, that would then help them run their field operations, mostly ESPs. And so they've now developed up to about 20 megawatts of power in Yoakum County, Texas. In April 2023, they had been operating just in Texas. They spent $330 million with an acquisition of oil and natural gas assets in Eddy County, New Mexico. And then in May of 2024, a year later, they just spent $18 million on a bolt-on acquisition that's adjacent to those properties they bought in 23. They call that Redwood, is that asset. And then finally, in May of 2024, I'll end the history lesson. They increased their stake into the Suter company to 50%, and now they're preparing to sell electricity straight into ERCOT, the Texas power system. So pretty entrepreneurial. That's one of the things Bobby Riley likes to do. So what attracted me to Riley? again, I had this relatively interesting government job, but it is government. But really, it's all about the assets. Riley has tremendous assets. I was in the business for 38 years, and I thought the Northwest Shelf, I would call it, probably second or third tier. But these wells are incredible. We generate about $100 million of free cash flow a year, with about 1/20th of the production that Scott had. And, that's with about a $70 oil price. We pay a dividend of over 5%, which is pretty unusual for a small cap. And then we pay down debt. It's a reasonable, manageable amount of debt. And we make payments down on each quarter with all this free cash flow. And the best part about it is, we have about an 8 to 10-year runway of this same level of assets. We only drill about 20 or 30 wells a year right now, but it's supposed to be, look, this is going to be great, but what's going to be next? And so right now we're focusing on not just the development strategy of especially the Mexico assets, but what's going to be the next thing that we do. And so some of our strategy is basically doing horizontal drilling and completion, typically on conventional assets as opposed to shale plays. We aren't against that. This is just the sweet spot that they've found so far. The assets compare very favorably to typical shale plays, and we'll see why in a minute. Riley has some of the track record of growth through the drill bit as well as acquisitions. So they kind of started that Champions field from scratch. And then basically it's also kind of a key target of ours to pay down debt as well as give back to the shareholders. It's kind of the critical thing to do these days. We believe in it as well. So just real quickly about the assets, Texas, we produce from the St. Andrews Formation. It's been there for 50 years, being CO2 flooded in other places. We're really in a really good structural spot. These things are about 55 to 5,800 feet deep, about 8 to 900 foot of reservoir thickness. We tend to drill about 1 to 1.5 mile laterals, just the way it's set up plan-wise. We have about 5 to 8 wells per section that we drill spacing-wise, and that's really just kind of depends on the particular geology there. There's about 110 wells, and most of that's been drilled by Riley. Most all of them are horizontal. And then New Mexico, we produce from the Yeso Formation. It's around 3,500 to 4,500 feet deep. It's got 2 distinct benches. It's a pit on top and a library underneath. About 1,500 feet to 2,000 feet reservoir thickness, spacing about 10 wells per section, 6 in the top one, 4 in the bottom one. What do these things cost? They're about $3.2 million in Texas, and we'll see what that gets you in a minute. We knocked about $1 million off of the drilling completion costs in a few years. Over in New Mexico, they're about $4.8 million. They have a lot bigger stimulation, slick water, higher rate, more water, more sand. We really hope we can trim that down like we have in Texas, so we get to focus on it more. So I mentioned we feel our asset base is compared to shale. And why is that? These conventional assets have, in general, higher porosity and permeability. We're about 50 to 60% more shallow than typical plays. Those shallow rates, shallow wells, they're certainly less expensive. I think we can make that rational connection. But the key thing is, what do you get for that? Large 5-year cumulative well production per 1,000 foot of lateral will compete very nicely with most shale plays. I just didn't know these wells kind of existed out there. They'll throw off a PV10 somewhere between 7 to 10 million bucks, which is pretty juicy and for what most of us would like to find. So Riley's a small cap company. We're pretty bullish about our track record of being able to grow. 21 to 23, they doubled their production. We are a small cap though. In 2023, I think we made 21.3 MBOE per day, 14.8 MBO per day, and that's about 70%. So what are our plans for the future? You know, in 2024, we have a public statement. We'd like to produce 10% more oil than we did in 2023, but we want to do it with 10% less CapEx. So we think that's, we're well on our way to that. We kind of strongly believe that what's really critical and tough for so many private equity companies is getting that infrastructure in place. This is sour gas and water disposals are tough in New Mexico, so you better have access to some disposal wells. We've done a really good job of doing that so we can grow at this pace, where a lot of the companies around us aren't situated here as well. So in the end, that makes us want to be a Northwest Shelf aggregator, consolidator. We think we're in a good position for that as we kind of see how it all unfolds. Certainly there's a lot of factors in that. And we're like everybody else. We have business development people that are scouring day to day trying to figure out what's going to be next. But it is strangely hard to find something that's accretive to add on to these shallow wells that make a ton of oil. So anyway, that's really all I wanted to tell you. Again, I just don't think a lot of people in town know about Riley Permian. I know a couple people that work there, but I had no idea what they actually, where they were working. So just want to let you know about that. Happy to answer any questions about this or why our government stinks or whatever else might be going on.
Any questions? Now's the time.
Yeah, I mean, we have done a little bit of CO2 injection as well for any OR project. It's really too early. We found it beneficial, but it's really a little bit early to do it more wide scale there. It was certainly going to be a backup plan if the government went rogue and made no emissions possible. We would have some ability to do that. But we did find that it works in the San Andreas. Just got to get a little bit further along in the depletion scenario.
Any advice for anybody right now as far as like small operators to larger ones that you do insights on right now that you'd like to see us as an industry start working doing a better job of?
I don't know. I personally think consolidation is a great thing. Again, when I was at Sandridge, we were dealing with some difficult assets. And listen, every quarter on the public company analyst call, that gets to be not a fun situation. But these companies are growing and growing, combining. We've all been through this couple of cycles. So shed 950 million of their assets. We certainly looked at it as well. Exxon shedding all of its conventional. So there's private equity companies that were, practically dying. But now there's all sorts of private equity money that's jumping back into the industry. So, again, to me, it's all about if you're going to dive in, make sure you've got assets. Again, if you can't generate free cash flow, it's just going to be a struggle in this industry. Thank you very much.
All right, guys, thank you very much. I'd like to give another hand to those four guys out there with her. Couple of announcements. I'm gonna have a Jeff Hubbard like come up and make an announcement. Also, our next monthly luncheon. There's a lot of things going on activity wise in the industry. So rather than the second Thursday of the month for our next luncheon. It'll be October 8th on a Tuesday. Because there's something else going on that Thursday, so. Oh, we already going on that day, that's right. So, Jim?
Hey, you relax, I don't have any wells to drill from my back. I can talk about the oilfield purpose, this is posted back here in the back there. October 16th, last year we had Doug Lawler as our guest speaker. This year we're really excited to have Hans Miller, who is the chairman of the board of Donnelly Pay. His dad started the company. He's got a great message to share with us. It's really a fantastic event. It's our 11th annual. We pray for our nation. Lord knows we need that. Pray for our state. We pray for the oilfield workers. You can get a table or a half table or just an individual ticket. It's a really cool event. It's right down the street at the end of C-Suite. We would love to have you. You get the QR code at the bottom of that, or just go to my LinkedIn page to find more detail. We would love to have you guys join us. Thanks, John Paul.
Thanks. All right, guys. That's it.
From St. John's, a fairly as well. See her.